Alright, my name is Jared Hobby. My project for class was watching a documentary over Enron corporations called Enron, Smartest Guys in the Room. It was a documentary about the rise and fall of Enron, what took place, what type of company they were, and kind of what led to them filing bankruptcy in about 2001, and the fraud that took place. And I apologize for the poor recording. I am not tech savvy as I anticipated, and do not know how to record myself on my computer while going through the PowerPoint. So this is what we're gonna get. I did make a PowerPoint, so we're just gonna follow through that. So who was Enron? Enron was founded in 1985 through merger of Houston Natural Gas and InterNorth, which was another natural gas company based in Omaha, Nebraska. These companies came together through a man named Ken Lay. He was their chairman, their CEO for the startup of the business. They ran on trading they were an energy trading company at first that sold natural gas, and by 1992 they became one of the larger natural gas companies in the North America. They later on would hire Jeff Skilling, who became their energy consultant. When in about 1990 they started contemplating working into the energy department, energy industry, as far as buying pipelines, buying energy locations, and trading large energy contracts. Jeff Skilling, as we learned throughout the movie later on, turned out to be the main reason for the fall and the creator of one of the largest frauds in North American history. He was deceptive. He came off to employees as being someone they could trust, someone that they could rely on, that's looking out for the best interests of them. Investors, stock market, they all believed that Enron was one to model themselves after. Enron was the model for how businesses should be run. They were innovative. They had employees that were happy with where they were at, salaries where they liked, they were competitive. And it was all through Jeff Skilling and Ken Lay who led these people to believe this, when in fact they were all going behind their back. The numbers were a lie. The income they were seeing was a lie. Everything about the company was a lie. Yes, they were making tons of money according to the public. Ken Lay and Jeff Skilling were making tons of money with the stock market, but the company itself was slowly on a trend of death, so to say. They could not, whether the company if anyone was able to point out the problems, they would not have been able to stop it. And that's what we saw in 2001 when the whistleblower finally came out and said, essentially just asked, how is it possible that Enron makes this much money during hard financial times when every other company does not? She told the SEC that something was not right. Their financial statements did not make sense, and this was ultimately what led to the decline of Enron. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. So facts about some Enron. Like I said earlier, they were a Fortune 500 company that other companies modeled themselves after. They were ones you wanted to be. They were the big dogs. They were the popular kids in school that you were going to do everything you could to get up there. You wanted to know what they were doing. They were the largest natural gas seller in the United States by 1992, which is impressive because they only started selling natural gas around 1990. They had obviously the energy background with the pipelines and things like that, but as far their big business came in trading large contracts. This was Jeff Skilling's idea. He was the one that vouched for this, and people followed him. Ken Lay he had the connections. He was known for being, some would say, best friends with George Bush, and some would say he was just very good friends with George Bush, to where this even brought in the White House whenever the scandal started of, if George Bush wins presidency, is Ken Lay going to become Department of Energy, or the Secretary for Department of Energy, and whether the United States was going to see a harder crush whenever that the bankruptcy came out. And this was something they talked about throughout the movie. If Jeff Skilling vouched for Ken Lay getting into the White House, because they knew Enron was only going to get more powerful at that point. They had the end, they had the people behind the scenes at this point, and it was going to be virtually impossible to catch them unless they messed up themselves. One of the interesting things I came out of the movie was right away, kind of caught my attention and made me think a little bit. They said it took 16 years for Enron to go from $10 billion in assets to $65 billion, and it only took 24 days to file bankruptcy. This shows two things: that obviously this was a huge fraud. This was one that is going to virtually be pretty impossible to stop after all the codes that came out of this. Sarbanes-Oxley came out of this. As far as requiring people to be audited, there was requirements for financial reporting. There was stipulations that giving people ways to report fraud. Before this, there had been huge frauds, but nothing on the scale of Enron's. Sarbanes-Oxley was there to give the whistleblowers a place to go, to where they would not see financial, turmoil to themselves, or they wouldn't be treated differently in the company until someone out there was able to gather the facts and report them. So I thought it was pretty interesting that it takes that much effort. Enron was a huge company. It takes them 16 years to get to $65 billion in assets, and then the second somebody whistleblows, says something's up, questions what's going on, it only took 24 days to file bankruptcy. And that's, any fraud there is just, it's not worth it. It takes many years to get up there, many years to get where you want, but no matter how many people you have on your side, it's going to fall, and it's going to fall quickly to where you can't fix it. No one wants apologies. No one wants your condolences, your sorries toward what you have done to them. They want you gone, and you're going to be gone. One of the main things that we've learned in all accounting classes is that is a fraud triangle, that if fraud's going to be there needs to be three things: pressure, opportunity, and rationalization. The pressure for Enron and their CEOs, Ken Lay and Jeffrey Skilling, they had to stay competitive. Enron became so powerful so fast they could not fall, could not look like fools to everybody else. And part of their salaries were coming from their stock earnings. So they were going to do anything on their financial statements. They were going to get people to say whatever to make their stock prices continuously increase, to where when they sold high and they made bank and they could leave. And that is what happened. They continuously made their stock price rise, and right as they knew it was about to fall, once they got word that something's going on, they let them go. And they made all their fortune, and as the stock prices plummeted quickly. Their opportunity was that they had the ends, they knew the people, they knew how to convince people to make the financial statements wrong. They could hide it, and the rationalization was that to their employees, they were making them have the best retirement plans, continuously saying, invest in the Enron stock, it's only going to go up, and the numbers showed it. There were many times where Wall Street would see other companies fall in stock price, and then Enron would somehow not fall. They'd fall, but not quite as much. They would stay about the same price as what they started at. So employees believed them, that they were looking out for them, and they were going to do anything they could. The fraud came in what was known as mark-to-market accounting. This was something that Enron had to pass through the SEC, and they successfully did. This was a type of accounting that was legal as long as you had a special purpose, and Enron believed that they did with their energy trading contracts. Most of their profit came from this. They mark-to-market was, it allowed Enron to sign contracts, trade contracts, and put on the balance sheet their projected earnings. And they would project billions in earnings, and then whenever the final earnings came in, they were supposed to change their projections to actual numbers. And that was the part that Enron did not do. They would put down projections for billions, millions of dollars, and then whenever actual earnings came in, which were dramatically lower than what projections were, they would not put that in to the financial statements. This obviously would lead to misleading financial statements. It's financial fraud, and it led to the average person not being able to read their financial statements. They could not. Their cover-up scheme was so difficult for the normal person that they could not figure it out, and all it was making new accounts to hide their debt through the mark-to-market, just using projections to continuously hide their debt. And they used these projections and the financial statements to continuously raise the price on their stock price, and allowed them to gain more loans from the bank. Because the bank, as far as they knew, they were making this money, they were going to be able to afford it, and in the end, they never were. And one of their company motto was why. Always ask why. Don't be afraid to ask why to their employees. Why is our company so much better? Why is our price always going up? Which was kind of ironic. Why would they want them to ask why when they knew the answer was going to be a lie? They knew that their answer was not legal. They knew that something was wrong. And this was, I thought this was a pretty good idea by Kinley and Jeff Skilling. And a good idea, not as that when I would do this, you just need to be transparent to, or appear transparent to the employees. Give them the confidence that nothing's wrong. Don't be afraid to come up and ask us, how's this happening? Because we're going to give you an answer. We're going to give you the truth. So ask us why. Why is everything at Enron better? We're going to tell you an answer. They were fraudsters. They weren't afraid of anything. They knew their lies. They knew how to convince you in their lies, and they were going to do it. So what's the reason to be a whistleblower if they're not giving you a reason to question anything? If you have a question, come ask why. Don't question it and go tell somebody else. Come ask us. We're not scared. Come, please. And this, eventually, somebody finally did ask why. They went to the SEC. They wrote them a letter and called them saying something's wrong and this needs to be investigated. It just doesn't quite make sense. And this led to, in 2001, filing bankruptcy, and the Enron had lost $74 billion in losses. Retirement plans had been ruined. Their employees now will be working the rest of their life. And this was a big deal for Jeffrey Skilling and Ken Lay when around 2001, both of them sold all of their Enron stock at a record high for them and encouraged all employees to continuously buy stock. It's going to be a good investment, when they knew in less than 24 hours it was going to be worth absolutely nothing. They were going to lose all of their money. And that is exactly what happened. They sold, made rich with hundreds of millions of dollars, and all employees lost all of their money because they were told that Enron was still successful. Don't worry about anything. And this relates to many classes that we've taken, but especially this fraud class, was that it was obviously one of the larger frauds in North America at the time. This was unethical from the start. They were going behind people's back, lying to people's faces, and they sold stock right before massive declines, and they lied. The numbers were wrong. Their feelings towards employees were wrong. It was all selfish in the end. This was a simple fraud for accountants and very complex for viewers, in the fact that really the only fraud was they just made up a new account of mark-to-market, made up projections, but to the viewers, they didn't understand mark-to-market accounting. They didn't realize these were projections and not actual earnings. Their actual earnings turned out to be their projections according to Enron, which was not the case. But to complex viewers, how do you question something that you don't understand? No one had used mark-to-market accounting. No one had needed to use mark-to-market accounting. And then another takeaway was, as an employee, if you're never going to be the CEO, don't be afraid to ask why. No matter what the CEO might say, what the bosses might say, just ask why. What's going on? Question the boss's every move, but be respectful in doing so. Don't be afraid to step out, because in the end you could end up saving lots of money, and in this case you would have saved the lives of many. They will not be working until they unfortunately have passed. You'll save people in the end. That was my project over Enron Corporations. I hope that was interesting. I found the movie pretty interesting and would recommend that to anybody that is feeling for watching a good documentary. Thank you.